and we appreciate the Commissioner and his team being first up this morning. So without further ado, I'll let Commissioner Cheney or whoever we need to kind of just go through. I think most of you have in front of you some information from the insurance department. And if you would, like we did last year, just kind of give us a little update on what you were able to do with the funding that we gave you last year, and then give us a little background on the requests that you have for us for this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll tell you, you've got the handouts, and we won't try to repeat all of the handouts unless you have some questions about them. But the bottom line is the dollars you appropriated to us last year, we stayed within the guardrails that you gave us and stayed on budget, basically. And we're going to do the same thing this year, whether we may not agree, but the legislature's final say so for appropriations. I've always said that for 30 years. And that's the way we operate. So with that, I'm going to start out and let Deputy Commissioner Brown tell you a little bit about what we're asking for. David, you want to use the microphone?
Sure. One of the things we want to talk about that is probably a little bit new is the Strength of Mississippi Homes program, the mitigation right now it's called the Comprehensive Hurricane Damage Mitigation Fund. The legislature appropriated $5 million to that fund this current fiscal year, and we've got this program up and running. We're really close to start putting some nails in some houses, and feel like we're probably going to expend that $5 million between now and June 30th. So in order to have a viable program going forward, we have to have an annual funding source to do that. So what we're proposing to do is kind of proposal to redistribute this non-admitted policy fee the way it is now. I think there was a total of $28 million of that 3% non-admitted policy fee that's going split between the first responders fund. It's like $500,000, then 3.5 goes to the annual fire fund off the top, and then as long as the wind pool gets 60%, which I believe ended up being $20 million, and then the annual fire fund and the wind pool get to split it. But what we're proposing to do this time around, we have this and some legislation. We'd like to take $10 million off the top of the fund, the non-admitted policy fee fund, right off the bat to go to this Strength of Mississippi Homes program. And then the $500,000 will still go to the first responders fund. Then the 3.5 will still go to the annual fire fund. And then $8 million instead of $20 million will go to the Mississippi Windstorm Underwriting Association. We still feel like this $10 million is still being reinvested back into the coastal area. It's just in the form of mitigation grants, which is more beneficial to an individual getting a mitigation grant than that money going to the wind pool, because you hope that you never have to use that money going to the wind pool because they're using it to buy reinsurance. And it's going over there to London. You may never use it, but these mitigation grants, individuals who apply and receive a grant will immediately get relief on the coast in the form of, one, strengthening their home to after a storm that you have less severity of damage, and then two, being able to immediately access up to 30-40% discount on their premium. So I think there's a lot more benefit in redistributing this money to a mitigation program than it is sending it to the Mississippi Windstorm to be sent over to London of something you may never use. And the Mississippi Windstorm Underwriting Association has gotten from the state since after Katrina, they've gotten over $400 million from the state through these non-admitted policy fee funds and through community block development grants and this reinsurance assistance fund that was set up after Hurricane with House Bill 1500 in 2007. So we really need to have an annual funding source for this program and a viable funding source. Alabama is getting $15 million this year for their mitigation program. Louisiana is getting about the same. Oklahoma is getting $10 to $15 million. All these other states that are subject to the peril of wind are getting substantial funding from their legislature for these programs. And that, I think that's what we need. And we had individuals that went over to London purchasing reinsurance, and they were talking to the reinsurers over in London, and they're hearing about us having a viable mitigation program coming on board. And these reinsurers are excited about Mississippi doing that, and they're willing to invest a lot of capital in our state if we have a viable mitigation program. And so we think that this mitigation program is the only way to help stabilize the market and help reduce premiums in the state. And right now, our plan is to start it along the coast and eventually move it up through the entire state, because everybody in the state is subject to the peril of wind. So that would be a long-term goal once we kind of stabilize the coastal area, is to move it upstate and have it for everybody to be available to apply for a grant to get it. So that's kind of my report on
so
it.
from a standpoint of the wind pool right now, I know when we met previously, that has a significant balance that's been kind of achieved over time, and so that's one of the reasons why you want to kind of readjust this or kind of rebalance this, away from that 20 million to kind of do this different kind of tiered approach on it.
So the wind pool has a little over $400 million in surplus, which gives us the ability, if it's not repopulated, to have about a 40% coverage just on the surplus without the premium tax base in case we have a catastrophic event. And you got to remember that during Katrina, we paid out about 30% of the claims that we had, but we paid out around $600 million that was actually flood damage instead of wind. And that's contentious because you've had wind versus water on the coast. But with all that in mind, if we take the 10 million to fund the mitigation program, leave 8 million as a permanent number without it going up and down in the wind pool, that makes them know what they've got to do on their budgets. And then we have a plan to raise the CONs for agents from $25 to $50. And we hope if it goes to the general fund, we'd love to put it in a special fund so that we have dollars available either to stay in mitigation, but if we have a catastrophic event and you've got to go back and have money for the wind pool to buy more reinsurance, you'd have the fund there to do that. So it's kind of a base, and David can explain a little of that, but I wanted to point out that yesterday morning, I looked at Senator Scott early in the morning at 6:45 Washington, our time, 7:45 Washington, talk about, he's the chair of banking in the U.S. Senate, saying that the only way that you're going to reduce rates in states like Florida and California, which has wildfires, and the average premium in Florida is through mitigation. He said every coastal state has a mitigation plan. We have a mitigation plan, so I wouldn't dispute it. Ours is not as funded as well as it should be, but to be able to say to the coastal people who think we're taking something from them, you've got to say the only way you're going to ever reduce your rates on the Gulf Coast is through mitigation.
So were we, with the 5 million that we set aside last year, were we able to, because I know we last year went into a lot of discussion about how far that 5 million would go, how much would be used for each mitigation, that kind of thing. Can you give us a number on how many properties have been mitigated, or how that has started, and if we are truly seeing some insurance premium reductions as a result of that already?
We have not. We are working toward and very close to mitigating the first house. The law went into effect July 1st, and we had to do an RFP. That took a substantial amount of time. We've had to find a software vendor. That takes time going through all that RFP process. And then we had to set up rules and regulations to do that. We're really close to being able to do that. We sent out back in November kind of an interest form, a registration to gauge the level of interest of people who meet the qualifications, who want to get their house mitigated. And we've had over 1,300 people in the bottom three counties that have signed up for this. And so that 5 million will by no means, that will blow through that. As soon as we open up that program for round one, and probably the first few rounds, we're going to blow through that $5 million really quick. And because we got
How much per mitigation, or what's our bang for the buck?
10,000 is currently is 10,000, a
That's
max
what I
of
remember.
$10,000. We're proposing to go up to 15,000 in the legislation we're doing. The reason for that is the average cost to retrofit your roof right now is $18,000 to $20,000. And the $10,000 what grant was set up really was established by Alabama back in 2017. And with inflation and the cost to replace and the material cost and all that, all that skyrocketed. So I think $10,000 is probably not enough to do it right now. We're proposing to go up to 15. We don't want to get in a situation to where if we keep it at 10,000, then the take up rate of, because the
People aren't
individual,
gonna use it if they're
people
out of
if
pocket
you,
on it
you know, if
extreme.
it costs to retrofit your roof is 20,000, you only get 10,000. An average person is not going to be able to come up with $10,000. And so we're concerned that the take up rate would be very low if we don't do something to increase that maximum amount of the grant. And we're not saying that everybody's going to get the full 15,000. You know, people who are putting on a new roof or building a new house, the cost is very substantial. It costs about $3,000 if you're building a new house to retrofit your roof to that IBHS roof level. The cost comes into play when you're replacing your roof totally. And that's a substantial cost these days because of the replacement cost value and all that. But just real quick, to go back to what the commissioner says, we are going to offer an additional funding source. And right now, anytime an insurance company appoints an agent to represent them, that fee is $25 per agent. We're proposing to raise that fee from 25 to 50, and where that additional $25 that we're proposing to raise, that $25 could go into a special fund to help fund this mitigation. So we're not proposing to take any money out of the general fund. We'd like to raise that fee from $25 to $50, and that additional $25 go into a special fund.
And again, your request on the mitigation is not an additional appropriation. It's a reallocation of the 20 million to allow that. And if we ask you to get a projection, because so I'm hearing that we haven't really used any of the 5 million yet. We got 1,300, that have signed up. We can do the math on that at either 10 or 15,000 per claim and figure out how fast we would go through the 5 million.
We're right at 2,000 now, requested funded. And the reason.
So that would be 3 million, correct?
You're right.
I may be wrong on my math, but that's about.
So the reason we hadn't done any mitigation is twofold. One, we had this RFP that we had to get in place, and that killed 90 days of what we were trying to do. And then we had to get all the contractors in place, which we've got, and we're using Habitat for Humanity, and we've got all our ducks in a row. And a lot of other things have happened. So we're at the point, actually, we're about ready next week to do the first house. And some new construction too. That's the reason on new construction, we're finding you can save anywhere from 3 to 7%, which is really good if you can get them when they're new and you enforce the building codes. Very quickly, I would tell you that that program will do more to lower the rates on the Gulf Coast and stabilize the market there than anything that we could do. We've got some other things that are happening worldwide with reinsurance that are happening with here in the courts in Mississippi with USAA and the minor lawsuit, that we may lose some major carriers like USAA may pull out of the market. And it's due to the punitive damage awards that they've gotten. And so you'll know we file an amicus. Our amicus will be filed either today or in the morning on that particular case. Mr. Chairman, if I may I quickly head up on the budget and then we'll go to fire trucks. I'm worried about time.
Oh, yeah. And just one last little comment, because I know the chairman has a question too,
Sure.
is that, if there was not a willingness by the chairman or this subcommittee to move it to 8 million this year, as far as out of that 20 million. It sounds to me like, any move that we made, from that fund to be moving in that direction would be a positive move. And so, because I don't know that necessarily in the next 1 year, you would have 13, you'd have 8 plus 5 of need, in mitigation, but you might, but that might be something we can talk about later. But I want to open it up to Chairman Hobson, because I think he's got a follow-up on this too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to cover this now while it's fresh in my mind, because I'll forget. As it relates, I wanted 2 comments or questions. One is, so that I'm not conflating issues, because I walked in a little bit late. You're saying that you would charge $25 for the agents to help put into the fund for the mitigation, correct? And quick question on that is, do you think that they would object to that, or you think that's something they're in favor of? Or is
They'll
it?
probably object to anything when you raise the rates. But
Yeah, well,
we haven't changed those rates in years. We changed the CON for companies back in 2009. And all of that money goes to the general fund. It was enough to fund the agency. We are not a special fund agency. We're a general fund agency, just like the fire academy is.
And just for clarification, the companies pay that fee, the agents do not.
and how does that compare? Because we're going to get the questions later. How
We're
does
the
that
third
compare?
lowest in the country.
Okay. You think it's something that most agents would say, yeah, we've been
Yeah,
low.
the agents don't
Basically.
care really. It's the companies that'll pay the money.
Okay. And then the other thing that you said that I wanted to follow up on was something about when you go to the reinsurance markets in London, that if because we have this mitigation plan, I think, David, you said it, or maybe it was you.
David did, yeah.
That they're willing to invest more. And I know what's going on. We all know what's going on with the insurance markets because of the catastrophic losses that have taken place. But I think you're saying that they're willing to insure more properties here if we have a mitigation plan. Is that right?
Well, the reinsurance market doesn't insure properties. What they do is they charge you for the reinsurance that you have to buy to lay off part of your risk.
Yep.
So in the wind pools case, we paid as high as 14% rate on line. So if you had $100 million, you pay $14 million to cover $100 million in risk. They've lowered that down to where it's
This is a simple, you're giving me more than I understand.
Okay.
It's a simple.
Oh, they're
question.
happy. They've
I just
lowered their
wanna say-
cost.
Yeah, I just want to say I think you're saying is they're willing to reinsure, they're willing to invest.
Reinsure more and lower the rates. We've got the rates down to somewhere around 6% for the first tier, which is really amazing.
Yeah, because I think you've seen some of this data. I know I've seen it about the significant problem we're having. And it's not just Mississippi, it's a lot of states with getting them to invest, or what they're going to have to do to be able to cover the big losses. If we had a state loss, for instance, if one of our universities got hammered, the difficulty in getting insurance, because the reinsurance market has apparently pulled back some.
They pulled back, but Mississippi's in good shape on reinsurance. We probably, Frank Bordeaux was in London with the wind pool, and they're also with Gallagher, and he called me from the airport in London. He said, Cheney, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever heard. And I said, you realize you're calling me from London and it's like 2:00 in the afternoon and he's getting on an airplane. He said, he was ecstatic about how the meeting went. So it's good for us. What we are trying to do is to give you a plan where we don't touch the general fund, where we take the dollars that are being wasted by AmWinds and put it into mitigation so we can lower rates, stabilize the Gulf Coast, and we've got to move forward. We've got to get out of the lower 6. Hattiesburg has the same risk pattern that you have on the Gulf Coast, and somewhere you've got to cover those folks too in the Pine Belt. So this is a win-win. Now, the problem is that people that don't understand insurance think we're taking money from the coast, but my Lord, we put a lot of money in the Gulf Coast, $700 million so far.
Well, I know, and folks, I'm sure the chairman over here could talk about it, the people in other parts that have issues with that too. But anyway, thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I will tell you, we're in
got-
great shape, so.
Another comment or two, I know we've seen, at least on documentation you've got some salary, contractual, and some vehicle items you wanted to mention to us as well.
So we've asked for $178,000 increase in salaries. The way we met salaries with attrition, when people have retired, we don't replace them. If you look at the number of pens that we actually have filled, I think we had 119. 113 now. So we've been able to move that money. Y'all been kind to us, at least Briggs has. I'll say that when he let us move money around. I'm not sure about Corbin over here, but but we've been able to move money and meet our budget. Travel's not real big to us because most of our travel is paid for by NEIC. And we don't travel a lot if we don't have to. Contract, all of this is self-explanatory, but I want to go down to the very bottom when we got the LoSAP. That's a law enforcement retirement fund. There's 3 million there. We took the heat for not moving the money. And let me tell you, it wouldn't matter whether we'd moved it or not. We got to have it reallocated. We couldn't get LoSAP off the ground because we didn't have all the appointments for the committee. We got the last appointment in
The other day.
the other day. And so we're ready to run, and we're going to be criticized by some people, but it is what it is. It wasn't our appointment. I'm giving cover for somebody who's very high up, so y'all figure that out. They've had a lot going on, so the 3 million is just a move forward, and the rest of it is self-explanatory. I'd be happy to go over the rest of it, but I think we want to talk about fire trucks. And before Kim's going to talk about that, I want to say that we already see bills that have been dropped for people to circumvent the rural fire truck program to have self-funding. We saw a lot of ARPA money used, and we're trying to get out of the fire truck business. Basically, what we'd like to do is to kill the RIF-TAF and move all the money that would normally go, like 3 million a year to RIF-TAF, and give it to the counties and make them still have to apply. And there's a lot of logic for doing that. The reason is that the counties always get a millage increase every year. 25% of the properties are reevaluated every year in every county, and they get a millage increase. And we see these counties that are rich coming to us wanting $90,000, and the poor counties that can't afford anything are getting nothing. And they get 50,000 because they hadn't used the round. So what we're trying to do is level the playing field and develop a plan where we can take care of those districts and those counties and those fire districts that have 7, 8, 9, and 10 ratings, where we can get the ratings back down. We don't need to be in the business of buying fire trucks so they look pretty in a parade. We need trucks that will suppress fires and save lives. That's what this is about. The third thing I would mention, there's going to be some pressure, I'm sure, from the House side to take some of the fire rebate money and give it to the ground transportation ambulances who claim they're uncompensated. And that's going to be a big deal. We don't have a bill in the Senate. It wasn't dropped.
It actually was. So the plan on the Senate side and the plan on the House side, I think Representative Turner has dropped code section on the House side is what I'm aware of. I dropped the code section on our side. I've already seen it's headed to Senator Michelle, and our plan, I hope, with his indulgence, would be to keep that code section alive as we go along, so that we would be able to work with Kim to kind of come up with a plan. And just for the committee here, the chairman and I and subcommittee chair on the House side, we went and looked at some fire trucks, and we've had conversations out of session, and we're interesting to hear your proposal, and I'm sure, through dialogue, we're going to have some, concerns and some things we're going to want to bring to it. But, my hope is that we can have the information in a proposal as soon as we can. I'm looking at the person who I'm pretty sure is going to be doing that work, instead of looking at you, Mr. Commissioner. No offense, but
You're fine with me. I think you figured out what I'm doing. I'm handing off a lot of what I normally do to other people.
right.
And
But I look forward to getting that, and as soon as we can, so that we
my
can,
porch looks better every day.
so that we can look
Depends
at it.
upon
But-
what happens on the bill we got over here, but
but I am in agreement that the problems you have indicated are problems that have necessitated the chairman and I going into this and looking into it. And we look forward to trying to find some solutions to the problems as you've mentioned.
I think we've got some, and the issue of, we do way more of what I would call emergency medical service sometimes at the rural fire truck business than we do suppressing fires. And I know that's going to be an issue coming out of the House. Y'all know you got a bill out, and we've got a meeting Friday morning at 10 o'clock at the Woolfolk with all the players, all the ambulance folks. I don't know if there'll be any legislators there or not, We're just trying to be a mediator between what the bill that's on the books now says versus what the companies can live with.
Very good.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn the fire truck business over to Ms. Kim Causey, who's working on the bill. Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, you did graciously sponsor a bill for us where we bring forward all these fire code sections on the fire trucks, Senate Bill 2402. And what we're working towards is, as Commissioner Cheney said, is to kind of phase out RIF-TAF and the supplemental fire fund because their time has kind of ended. When RIF-TAF started about 30 years ago, $50,000 would go a long ways towards finding a fire truck. Right now, on the latest round, you get 90,000. That doesn't really help when a fire truck's $500,000. And for these smaller rural areas that don't have a lot of tax base, it's really a hurdle they can't overcome. So what we're trying to do is, as we said, phase out the fire truck, the RIF-TAF and supplemental, and then perhaps set up what we already have, a matching fund, work with that to establish some sort of a sliding scale for these areas that really need assistance on getting a fire truck to get them a fire truck. And use the annual fire fund, the already existing annual fire fund to fund that. We get the annual fire fund from the non-amended policy fee, 3.5 million automatically goes to that. And then we get 1/2 of whatever's left over after the wind pool receives 60% of the non-amended policy fee. So that's been about $8 million, I think. $7 or $8 million the last 2 years. And we would be able to use that money and use these grants to help these smaller areas, these fire districts that have very high fire protection ratings. That's kind of the idea we're working with at this time.
Well, we will probably, just in the interest of time, we'll probably continue that conversation either through a meeting or through just some sidebar discussions as we move through this process. But, if you would just, the information you mentioned, Mr. Commissioner, from your meeting coming up, just keep us informed on what you're hearing, and
You have to.
we'll try to move it along and everything that you hear too, if you would involve the chair and vice chair of insurance in the discussion too, because this is going to be something that not only is an appropriation issue, but is a general legislation issue as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do try to include the chair and vice chair as much as we can. And sometimes I feel like I worry Walter way more than I should. But what we're worried about is a compromise to make certain that you have ground transportation in the rural parts of the state. And that costs money. And the way the legislation that passed last year was written, it amends contracts, which is illegal under the Constitution. So there are going to be lawsuits if we don't figure it out. Now, I don't enforce it. There's no teeth in the bill.
Right.
And that's a tough deal. The state health plan could suffer anywhere, depending on how the bill runs, anywhere from $1.5 to $7 million in increased cost. That's just on one item. We just had a board meeting this morning over those issues. So we got a lot of things in play. We appreciate you letting us be here.
Absolutely.
Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairs.
Yep. And so we'll move quickly on to our next group, which is, I think, the Fire Academy, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, and I've got my, I've got this. I think I've already got one of these that you sent me already.
That's a good question. Briggs, on that CON to raise $12 million.
Right now, it's $25, 12 million. It raised additional 12, 13 million. Raising it 25.
And we're not touching the general fund, so that's a good number for y'all.
Yeah, we would definitely set up a place for it to hit and reside, and that'll be something discussion. And it may be a phase-in type of thing. I mean, if you don't need 8 million the first year, there'll be something that I want to talk more about down the road, but we can touch on that later.
Well, they're like
Fire Academy. Yeah, I can't see why a California fire should impact Mississippi ratepayers, but if you start to see that is going to be the case, I would love to hear that. But again, we'll continue. I know we're going to have a lot to talk about on that, but thank all of you for joining us. So, okay, we'll move over to the Fire Academy, and just like we opened the insurance, I know last session, you had some needs that we tried to address. If I recall, the building and things like that were important to you. If you would give us just a brief just update on what you were able to do with funding we gave you last year, and then touch on your request for this year.
Yes, sir. Hey, thank you all. I
And
know
if you would
guys-
introduce yourself again too, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, sir. We'll do it. Hey, so I'm Kelly Elliott. I'm the Executive Director of the State Fire Academy. Sitting here beside me is Paul Ammerman. He's our Deputy Director of Support Services. Right here, I have our Deputy Director of Instructional Services, Barry Burnside. And we have several of our chiefs and HR and administrative supervisory staff here in the room with us today. And as we always say, we're trying to always grow people and keep everybody in the loop. So the machine can always keep going no matter what happens. But just a quick update of what you did for us last year, which is very much appreciated, is you gave us enough funding to refurbish our heat building, which is primarily why we're there, right? It's we call it our new heat building, but it was starting to get aged. And so we're in the process of actually getting that done, taken care of. We've had people out on site. They've given us all the information that we need to make a decision. So we'll hopefully be signing a contract on getting that refurbished here in the next couple of months or so. The other thing that helped us out a lot is our auditorium. So you guys gave us plenty of money to take care of the roof there. We've been coordinating with the Bureau of Buildings, and that project should be getting started fairly soon. And just kind of a little background. Hey, we operate approximately about 100-acre campus out there. So we're a small footprint state agency with approximately 62 positions. And but we do operate that campus. We have our own internal maintenance staff, our own internal water system. We bring in the fuel for all the props and simulations we do. And that's going to be key to what some of our asks this year and what we're trying to do to maintain that campus. A little side note, we hit 50 years of service this year, this past year. And had a great little celebration. We brought in George Dale, some of the other commissioners, and some of the ex-directors and some of the ex-staff, and it was really good. And there's a nice little video out there if you want to watch it. It kind of hits home on what the Academy was when it first started to what it is today, based on what you guys have done for us. And, in recent years, the dormitory fire station was one of the more recent adds to the Academy, and we continue to grow, and the demand continues to stay high from around the fire service from your communities. But with that said, hey, we operate pretty much about 95% to above of our budget. I pushed Paul pretty hard on our budget at the end of the year, a little bit to that uncomfortable level, because we're trying to execute everything you do for us. There's really not a lot of frills in there, but we execute it and we take care of the entire fire service, and we want to continue to do that. And there's a reason we're known as the #1 fire academy in the USA. It's because what you guys have done over the years, and because of the product that we deliver with the staff that we have. And just kind of touch on that staff. It has far-reaching in throughout this state and throughout this country with what we do, because we don't just do in residence. If you didn't know our campus, we have dormitories, we have kitchens and dining rooms, we have classrooms, you name it, we have it there on site. And we have people beating on our door every day, whether it's industry, whether it's cities, whether it's counties, whether it's international, to come to our academy because of the reputation we have. And so the demand is high, and we're always trying to kind of make sure we're improving and moving forward. And part of that is keeping our infrastructure up to speed. One of the things we're fighting, and I know I've mentioned this, and I know nobody comes to you, not asking for money, but that's why we're here, right? Is we're trying to compete with the local fire departments, and because of the environment we're in out there, we used to have to the competition used to be in the north part of the state and the south part of the state. The competition has now gotten to the central part of the state. So our own neighbors outside our back door are at a point now where we're not able to lure those high caliber firefighters to the academy to be instructors. And just to give you an example, I had Cindy with our HR department kind of pull some stats over the last 7 years. And on average, we have about 3 applicants every time we have an announcement put out that are qualified to work at the academy. Unfortunately, all of those applicants aren't people we want, because we want to make sure we continue to do the best that we can for the fire service. Along with that, we prioritize. We prioritize your cities, we prioritize your counties, and then we prioritize Mississippi industry. And we always have industry beating on our door from Louisiana, Texas, and Alabama, Georgia, you name it, because they want to come to our academy. So one of the big asks is, again, is to help us get our salary progressions where they need to be so we can be competitive with the outside fire service. We have situations right now where there's some departments that send us an 18-year-old recruit firefighter who's uncertified, who's making as much, if not more, than my instructor sitting in front of the classroom teaching that guy. So that's kind of disheartening. We're not immune to what law enforcement and Capitol Police and everyone else is going through. But because we operate on such a thin line, it impacts us significantly. And right now we have 2 instructor openings. And we have 2 more that just put their paperwork in the queue. And it's not because we don't have a great culture. We have a great culture. People love the place. In fact, when they get out there, they tend to stay, which kind of goes to my next point. We got about 50% of our instructional staff is eligible to retire, which, when the right time comes, they're probably going to punch their ticket, and I don't blame them. So we're kind of concerned with that. It's a recruitment retention issue. We have other staff members that's also starting to get there. So if you looked at our overall staff numbers, probably 30-something% of the academy staff could retire in the next year or so. So our ask there is, when we're starting to look at salaries and fringe, and this is obviously would be one more of our recurring items, is we have vacant positions right now, 5, actually 4. We just filled one of our maintenance positions this week, which was good for us. And so our number there to continue with those vacant positions is already in the budget. It's about $342,000. What we do need is, again, if you remember earlier on, I said we have about a 100-acre campus. We have a very small footprint maintenance staff, and we're always competing with all these other companies outside the academy to get the person that can work on HVAC, to get the person that's an electrician, to get the person that's a plumber, and we can't compete with that. So between contractual services and between the small maintenance staff we have, we're trying to build a succession plan there to take care of our manager of our maintenance team right now, who's probably going to retire. And in fact, he's told us he's going to retire in the next year or so. Again, retire, not go take another job, because again, he loves the place, but it's time for him to go on. So we are asking to add an additional position in maintenance so we can get a succession plan there and get someone ready to take over that maintenance lead to take care of the campus. Probably the bigger recurring asset I'm looking for is $293,000, or just a little bit above that, which gives us the progression we need to be competitive with the outside departments. We just had one of our probably all-star instructors that we've been grooming for the last 3 or 4 years. And it probably takes 3 or 4 years to get the person you want and groom them to be a great instructor. And we just had them go to Brandon because Brandon had to step up to the plate, align their police to fire departments, and the salary that they offered, we probably would have hit him if he didn't take it because it was just too good. And, when you get the younger instructor like he is, the money means something. When you get the older guys like we have that's been there for a while, our girls, then the culture means a little bit more. So we're competing with those type departments. And like I said, where it used to be the North and the South, it's now the Central, and it's kind of got in our prime recruiting ground is what it has done. So that ask would kind of help us get our folks up to what we feel like is competitive to get more than 3 applicants to apply to our assessment. And because we have a pretty stringent assessment process that they go through, because when we invest 3 or 4 years into a person to make them the great instructor for your folks, we want to make sure they're capable of handling it and they're not just running from some other job or some other department somewhere. you don't have any questions on that part, I'll kind of move on to another one of
So
our.
what I have on the sheet I have in front of me is an ask for salary progressions and fringe changes of 554,946 above the recommendation. Is that the number? Are we looking at the same? Okay.
Yes, sir. That's,
Okay. And
that
then-
would include the progressions, that would include the
things you
realignment of, some of our SPB, positions. We have
but that's not, is that an across the board increase for all of your pins? Emily just told me you have 62 pins.
we do.
Is that an across the board?
That,
increase,
that
or
would
is that-
allow for us to kind of give an across the board to everyone that's there.
Okay. And we can find out what percentage that is. Okay.
And that would be
also
when-
on our sheet here, you have the contractual services that I think you touched on a second. There was note here for registration and management software. I think you talked about that last year. There's a request of 180,879 for that. Is just kind of briefly give me an update on that. I remember that from last year. If you remember, if I remember correctly, that allows you to connect and do the registrations across state lines and do things like that to make this process easier for you.
Yes, sir. So we've had a lot of manual processes. As with a lot of agencies, we had a lot of spreadsheets. We had a lot of manual processes that were built by our older IT department that has since left. And it's hard to maintain those programs once someone has built it and taken off. So that system is in effect now. We have actually went live with that just at the end of last year. We did all of our registration through that system this year. We're going to be doing our invoicing through that system. People are going to actually be able to get their transcripts through that system. It's going to give us a ton of capability. So we have implemented it. We're working the bugs out of it.
'Cause I thought we did something on it last year.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we did 245 on it last year. And so the 180 that I mentioned a second ago, is that in addition to the 245 we did last year?
Not in
or-
addition, I think our recommendation was about that much lower than what our baseline was last year. We was asking for to implement the system. So what that contractual services does is it doesn't just actually fund that system that we implemented, which was cleared through the state IT, but it also helps us deliver fire service training throughout the state with adjunct instructors, take care of the facilities. You know, if it's replace or repair any of the props, whatever it takes. So contractual services is one of our bigger items. And Paul, you can kind of speak to anything I'm missing on that.
I think there's some confusion with the registration system. We didn't buy the system outright. It's a software as a service. So it's a recurring cost. We pay it with a 5% increase every year. The next year's is going to be around $180,000 because we are going to be moving one of the modules for the learning management software. We're going to be moving that into Acatus, which is the registration system. So we're just asking to continue the funding for that management software.
But that was not factored into the budget recommendation that you first. So this is an ask above what you saw on like the JLBO number that came to you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then we also moving now because of the interest of time here. Now you have purchase of 4 vehicles.
Yes, sir.
Just briefly, what type of vehicles are those and where do you use them?
So we have a fleet of vehicles. Like I said earlier, our staff delivers training all over the state. Sometimes that's delivering equipment. If you've ever seen the what we call the LP burn come to your community where they do the LP gas burns, that's pulling trailers, that's pulling rescue equipment. That's allowing training to happen all over the state, but it's also going to departments all over the state and delivering field programs or testing for field programs.
So could you get us an age and a mileage
Mhm.
of your existing equipment, and so that we can consider that? Because as you know, we have a number of vehicle requests from every group that we meet with, so that would be
Yes.
helpful on that.
Well, and on that one handout at the very bottom, we're looking for 4 vehicles, and our vehicles have an average age of 17 years. and an average of 113,000 miles. But we actually have 4 vehicles that have over 200,000 miles on them.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And we may already have that already in here. So
We could give you a little more detailed data on that if
that'd be
needed.
good. And the other things that I see increases on here was a tractor, excavator, and match for federal grants.
Yes, sir. So our excavator, our backhoe is about 30 years old, and it's utilized again on that 100-acre campus to help us do maintenance and to actually help us do rescue scenarios also. If I was going to give you an example of some of the things we do with it, Nick, Chief Nick back there in the back, he runs the special operations group, which does advanced auto extrication. When he does one class to train the responders from the state on advanced auto extrication, they bring in 20 cars, and those cars have to be moved everywhere. Likewise,
I'm a tractor person, so you don't have to go into it.
Well, likewise, we've
So-
had to dig up a lot of water lines here lately to repair, to do repairs. So the 30-year-old one is pretty unreliable, and it's very helpful for everything at the academy.
And the last thing we see here is replace, refurbish the water system.
sir.
In just kind of prepping for today, I know in last year's request, there had been $100,000 request for that water system last year.
Mhm.
And I don't think we moved anything to it because we did the roof and we did the other things.
Yeah.
And my question on it is, why is the request $350,000 more than what was requested last year for water system?
So it's expanded. Last year was not a full replacement of the water system. This would be a full replacement of the loop. It would be a replacement of the jockey pump that keeps the pressure up in that system. And it would actually get some of our lines up to code or in compliance. Paul, if you got any more details on that, please add.
There's a section of our water system that's above ground, and then a section, the majority of the system is below ground. The 100,000 from last year was purely to replace the above ground lines. This would be a total replacement.
And we did not fund the 100,000 last year.
It's kind of one of those single point of failure things. If we've got 3 or 4 classes on campus and they're on the pads or in the building and the water system goes down, it kind of shuts us down. Those,
Very good.
even if we wanted to simulate firefighting, the props can't handle it. They've got to be cooled.
Well, I'll just say this and then open it up for any questions, but we appreciate the work you do. I think that's recognized by the amount of funding we put your way last year. I look forward to seeing, and this is not something I've seen before. It might be, some of the members of the committee, when you do get the building going, and you have these improvements made. Just me personally, and I'm sure others might want to see that in action, and see, that we are making a difference. When you do say that you're #1 in training around the country, I think that's a thing we should be aware of, and kind of go back and tell people at home, some of these things we need to be proud of. So we will look at these, and then as always, with the chairman, we'll prioritize needs as we can. But are there any questions from the committee? Mayor McClendon?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to reiterate what you just said. They do a great job of inviting mayors and aldermen to come and see how we train your people. And they have reached out to legislators to have a legislative day to come and scale the wall, do the hose, get in that heat building, which I've been in personally, and it'll make you thank these guys tenfold. But yes, sir, I want to thank you what you're doing, and these guys are one of the most important agencies in our state, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions? I'm sure we'll have some feedback with you as we look along here, but thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank y'all. Thank y'all for what you do.
Okay, moving just quickly to the others, I hope will move a little quicker than the last two. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I got so many papers now, I can't find I've got a paper here that tells me. I think it is pharmacy next. Yep. Okay, so I know you've been waiting for a little while. Our plan is for your meeting to go considerably faster than ours with the insurance department. Are we in agreement on that?
We are in agreement.
Okay. So
We are definitely
thanks,
in agreement with that.
yeah, thanks again for joining us. And if you would, just kind of quickly, I know we met last year and, if you would, just update us on how things went briefly last year and, what needs you have this year if they are different than before. So, and if you would introduce yourself again too.
Okay, I'm Susan McCoy, the Executive Director with the Board of Pharmacy. Todd Deere, our Associate Director. And so anyway, thank y'all today for letting us come by and just tell you, kind of update you on how things have gone the last year. They've gone pretty well. Budget wise, everything's good. The only requests that we have this year are, we kind of had a little, I think we had asked for 2 cars last year. If you'll look on the back of our handout, okay. You'll just see we did it in a little chart just to make it easier for you to look at. But the only thing that we're really requesting is our salary increase, which is only 1.88%. It's not even, and it's all based on their performance evaluations. And then our vehicles, we kind of had a little, last year, I think we requested for 2, but we only were able to get 1 based on our mileage and the way things have worked out with all of that. We are asking once again for the spending authority for the $500,000 for our PBM audits. Y'all know how all that's going. So anyway, we have successfully done some audits and now we're in the process of trying to work through all of that and what those mean. So that's where we are with those, but we would like to continue to be able to do those to ensure that we can ensure compliance with the laws that y'all give us. So that's what those are for. The only position that we have unfilled at this point is our PBM position, and we've been trying to hold off on that to kind of wait to see how our audits go and to see exactly what kind of skill set we need for that PBM position. So that's the reason why that one is not filled, but we would like to be able to keep that one as well so that we can probably in the next year as our audits start coming through and we kind of see where things are going to land with all of that, see what kind of complaints our pharmacists are starting to give us, because depending on what new language gets sent through down here, our pharmacists might be giving us more complaints, and so we might need a different skill set. So that's the whole reason why that's being held off. Other than that, that's pretty much it, other than answering any questions that y'all have for us.
And as last year's special fund, based on the collections of dues and things like that, what is your
Yes.
fund balance now?
Our
that-
fund
that you
balance
have.
is down here at the bottom of this. You can see we've got our cash balance is 6.8 million. We are treating that like our rainy day fund because
Right.
we've got things that we anticipate might be changing our revenue sources with the depending on what FDA does with the national licensing of wholesalers and 3PLs and all of those things, that could change some of our revenue sources. Along with, we may need some of that money for our PBM things that are with each one of the year that, with our $500,000 that if we get to the point where we're spending that, we're
Right.
just not real sure how that's going to land.
And we appreciate that because of course, any event like that came along where, you exceeded the amount in your special fund, would be something the legislature would look and would have to try to find a way to shore up. So hearing that you've got a good cash balance and that you're asked for spending authority this year appears, and at least in this view here, to be extremely reasonable. I just want to say I appreciate that because that's not what we always see. So, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. But are there questions for Susan? Seeing none, we will take this under consideration. And again, this may be one of the easiest little meetings that we have this session, and we thank you for that. And looking forward to another easy meeting next year.
Well, we appreciate that. We do take our fiscal responsibility seriously. We try to live within our means, and y'all been able to allow us to do that. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Susan. I think we got one more public utilities coming in. You leaving again?
Comments, I saw when they opened their folder, I saw regulating PBM, so I was like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not gonna listen if they're gonna say.
Yeah, I think that 500,000 kind of set aside like that. I like to hear that they are. So thank you, Jim, for being here. And, as somebody who has a lot of family members in the Bruce Calhoun City area, it's always good to see, some of my people who are probably related to me and we don't know it.
That's right.
So
Pretty
we
good
kinda-
chance.
Pretty good chance. So if you would, whoever's going to kind of speak, and that's up to you. If you would just give us just a little rundown on how you were able to use the funding that we gave you last year, just briefly, and what your requests are this year, and why you have the needs that you do.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I appreciate that very much.
And is there a handout for us, or we
Uh,
just have the?
basically just the regular
If not,
sheet,
we can.
but I do have a copy of something
Okay.
that just my notes, but I'll be sure everybody
Yeah, you
gets
can
one
give
when
us
I
that at
leave.
the end. That'd be fine.
Right. This is pretty simple, but it's really simple today because what y'all done for us in the past. Last year, y'all were very generous and that we asked for a small increase in our contractual services because of some things we had going on with the AWS project, and we're having our first set of looking at the rates and everything on a private water system company that we haven't done in the past, and so we're having to review that. So there was a little additional work, primarily because of the AWS though. And so, but y'all gave us that for the 25 budget, so we didn't ask for any increase there. We had our travel was increased last year. We didn't ask for any increase this time. And the reason travel was increased because we've hired a lot of new people, and primarily we're using that. We're sending them to training, and the primary locations either New Mexico or Florida, one for that training. And so we kind of rotating and sent some of them last time, sending some over the next couple of years. And so we didn't ask for an increase there. Don't really need anything in the commodities. We asked for the same thing as salary that we did last year. So basically we're asked for level funding. And that was the budget that was presented. It was reduced by a little over 100,000, and that was primarily because of the vacancies, the requirements that they have to go by. We have 19 field positions right now. We're budgeted for 25. This time last year, we were able to replace 6 positions last year during 24, but we lost 5 people. We had two went to private sector, 2 went to other state agencies, 3 went to the private sector. Actually, that's 2 and 1 retired. But we did make a little headway, and we think that we'll be able to have the same success in hiring people this year that we had, and we don't anticipate the losing the individuals that we lost last year. Now, part of the reason that we have the 6 vacancies is because, as y'all know, we were out of our office for an extended period of time because of the flood of the Wolford building. They actually didn't move us back into the end of the year as far as being full-time in the office. Now, we never, other than the first couple of weeks, we never abandoned the office, but it was a situation where we really didn't have a place to work, and so we're working kind of some remote, some just in makeshift situation, but it wasn't conducive to hiring anyone. You couldn't really interview, you couldn't really bring people in, but we still were able to add. And you might ask, well, you got 6 vacancies right now, and what would be wrong with the reduction? There's a couple of things. We have 4 of those positions have actually been advertised. A couple of those have closed, and we're in the process of reviewing the applications right now. We've had multiple applications for each position. We have a couple that we're still receiving applications on, so we're not reviewing. So we anticipate filling most of those positions during this coming year, as long as we have the money to do that. So we're requesting the reinstatement of the budget as to the same level that we requested, which is exactly the same level we got last year. That will give us the ability to fill these vacant positions. And we're very hesitant, even though we are getting the work done right now, we're very hesitant to go backwards and to give up any of that because we really, the workload from the AWS project hadn't really hit us yet because they're in the early phases of that. And so we hadn't been to the point we've had to do a lot of approval, that type of stuff. We're just getting started on in this water area that we haven't been in. So we're on an attempt to fill these positions. And one or two of these are attorney positions that may not affect our day-to-day operation, but it definitely affects our long-term ability to clear up some of the backlog of some of the stuff that we have over there. So, and just, like I say, during the past year, one thing that we were able to do with y'all's help was we brought back, an employee that had 20-something years' experience that had left and gone to the private sector. And we were able to hire her back because of some reclassification that the personnel board did and allowing us to use some of the funds that we had. And that's been a tremendous help to us, especially as we're training and onboarding all these new people. It's very nice to have somebody with 20-something years' experience that can hold their hand, and she's kind of looking over, making sure everything is done. And we are, in addition to this budget, some of y'all may be aware that we have a fairly substantial amount of contract work and that utilities pay for outside of these contract funds, but we have been able to reduce that. And over time, the goal is for that to eventually go away. And so we were able to reduce that $50,000 last year, from 350 to like 300, I think. And we're going to gradually be able to reduce that down as we train these individuals to do some of the work that's being done by consultants. Now, there's going to always be a need for consultants. They're always going to be able to provide expertise that we can't provide. One thing, we don't have an engineer now because of some changes statutorily that were done. We can use consultants to do that. And we don't have an economist, and we don't have an engineer because we're just not price competitive.
Right.
And we can't hire an engineer. And then as far as the economists, it's same thing is price plus the fact that we only need one very randomly. And so it makes more sense to contract for that.
So what I'm hearing overall here is that, because you weren't in the building last year, you weren't able to hire all the people that you need because I'm interviewing things, but you have still that need,
Yes.
that you would like to have the ability to fill if you can, but you do not have an additional ask for us.
I do not have an
yeah,
additional
so,
ask now.
But you would like to maintain the 24 pins that you have, right? The 25 pins.
Right.
I thought you said 25.
I think it's
19.
field is 25.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Because there's 80,000 that was in AWS that y'all
Right.
approved, that $5 million for AWS for
Right.
administrative type stuff. And so it's set up where 80,000 of those special funds is going into our salary line each time. And that's really to fill a position. And, we are currently interviewing for that. And it won't be one person that will work for AWS, but that's just because of the additional workload that the office will do, then that person will fill that.
So I think it's 25 positions plus those two. So for
Well, there are two that that are not funded. They weren't funded they haven't been funded for a while. But they're still on there. Yeah. They're 25 funded positions.
25 public positions, but you only have 19.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
One more question.
yes, sir. But if you would, speak in microphone in case anybody's.
And one other question. How much did you, help me to understand that, how much did you spend out last year for consultant service?
By statute, the utilities pay for a good bit of that,
Mhm.
depending on. We can get you that number, but it's charged to the utilities who the work is relating.
Okay. My rationale for asking that question is because, okay, you're saying that you would like to maintain your 25 positions available. And I'm assuming that those that were not hired, you have to use consultant services.
Right, and a lot of that consulting is like amortization schedules and different things that we would never hire anybody internally that would do those things.
Mm.
But yes, we contract in addition to those 25. And this contractual services that are on here, those are a little bit different than what we're talking about the utilities pay for.
There are a few circumstances where we cannot charge the utilities. For example, a new rate case that comes in where the utility is new and they haven't entered into an agreement to pay those consultant fees. So those have to come out of our budget. We had such an example a few years ago where the staff had to pay directly for a consultant to consult on behalf of the staff for a new utility coming into Mississippi. And in that scenario with a new utility, without an agreement for them to pay the cost of the consultant reviewing their filing with the staff and the PSC, we had to pay for that consultant out of our budget. But going forward, that utility is paying for it.
Okay. And how long have you had 19 individuals working?
Well, it's always a moving target. We had 18 when we came here last year. We've had as many as 22, 23. So as people, even during last year, we got up 22 at one point in time. But as these people left, we barely had some people hired. They worked like a month or two and then somebody retired. So it's a moving number. It's not, that's a snapshot taken on that day, there were 19. And we haven't hired anybody in the last 2 or 3 months. So we actually still have 19 now, even though hopefully a month from now, it won't be 19. It'll be 20, it'll be in the 20s.
Any other questions from the committee? Well, we appreciate you with the detailed explanation. If we have any more questions, we'll get back with you. And, again, yours is pretty straightforward. We just need to look at, kind of the pins and kind of make the decision on what we need to do there. So, but thanks so much. And thanks, Emily. And thank you to the committee, because I think this is our last meeting. Tomorrow's meeting is again at 8:00. And for Senator Michelle, that was Christie's recommendation. So it came directly from Christie, wasn't mine, but we will try to go quickly in the morning. It's more special funds tomorrow. So thank you all for attending. Hopefully I'll see you bright and early in the morning. Is there a motion? Yeah. Rise and report.